Coming up next, the co-writer and founding member of one of the premier bands of the 1980s and 1990s tells us the story behind the defining song of their great frontman's short life. It's from one of the greatest albums of 1987 going into 1988. This conversation, I'm telling you, it's a can't miss on Professor of Rock, brought to you by Blue Blocks from Zenni Eyewear. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. We invite you right up front to join our community of music celebration, the rock era, by subscribing below so you don't miss out on our daily content. And I'm excited to bring you another episode from our series Revelations, where of course featured artists reveal rare stories about their biggest songs, along with fascinating insight about their careers. Now, on this installment of Revelations, I'm honored to bring you episode 2 of our recent Zoom session with the great Andrew Farriss, the multi-instrumentalist, co-founder, and co-writer of multi-platinum band INXS. Along with Michael Hutchence, Andrew co-wrote most of INXS's biggest hits, including Never Tear Us Apart, which is today's featured song story. Again, very honored for this, and that's where our story begins on Revelations.
When Kick rolled around, that's where we set ourselves up right from the beginning, was let's approach it like what you need. Let's go into this thing, and just every single song could be a single, like everything that we do and write.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything.
That was a song that I know has meant a lot to you and has meant a lot to Michael as well. That was a number 7 hit here and hit everywhere. I mean, special significance. Talk about the genesis of that song, because you wrote it on a piano and it was slower, and that really kind of turned into something different.
Worlds colliding, and they can never tear us apart.
Originally, I had the idea that I'd written on a piano. We were in New Zealand, of all places, and we were at the record company A&R guy, whose name, I'm not making this up, his name was Jimi Hendrix. Anyway, don't ask me why. And he had an upright piano, and I started writing that idea. And I said to Michael, "What do you think of this? I got these chords," and I played the verse and the chorus to him, and he said, "I love that. What is that?" I said, I don't know. And I was playing it on the piano, and he said, "Just remember that, and we'll finish that later." And so when I got back to Sydney from New Zealand, I tracked it as a demo with a little riff, and it goes down, 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 and all that. And I broke it down into parts and the arrangement. I tracked it, and then Michael came over to my house, and we tracked his vocal as a demo on it, and that was how that one came together. But the Kick album was broken into 2 sections, and I think the X album was too, which is a very clever way to produce a record if you've got the luxury of doing it, where we wrote and recorded half the songs on both albums, and then stopped and took a break. And then those breaks are important. They're like reality checks, because when you're recording an album, you can get a little bit lost in it. You're just in this art world, and you're not really sure what it sounds like in the bigger world outside your own little bubble, you know. And that's what we did with Kick and with X. It was Chris Thomas's idea. It was a really good idea. I'm wondering if he learned that from working with the Beatles, or, you know, one of those other artists he'd worked with, because that was very clever way to produce, you know, where you stop and you take your album away that you've been working on, and you listen to the songs and recordings, and you go, "Do I like where this is going?" And even better, you say to yourself, now I know what it's missing. You know, as an album, it's halfway there, you know, like, and then you go, okay, you know what I mean? And then we'll finish it off by doing this kind of music, you know, or this kind of song or whatever. You know, I think that's a good way to produce an album.
Well, Never Tear Us Apart was like, as I understand it, faster when you first played, like a Fats Domino almost type thing.
Yeah, and it was more Stonesy. And back then, it didn't sound like the rest of Kick. It was like an old, you know, even Chris Thomas said when he first heard the song, he wasn't sure about it either, because I originally wrote that dun 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 thing on the piano, and he said it sounds like an old 1950s or Stonesy blues thing. And I said, yeah, kind of is like that, you know. And then Chris suggested me to play the string samples on it instead, which is what I did. I played it as a string orchestral part on the keyboard. And that was a very clever idea of Chris to do that. And then he fell in love with it. We all did. Well, that's it. That's got to be it, Yeah, that was Chris's idea.
Like you said before, this was a song where you wanted every song to be a potential hit, and it didn't want it to sound like anybody else.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it started off. Instead of the piano, in fact, I listened to the recording of it that we first did when we got in the studio with Chris Thomas. I actually wasn't playing the piano on it. I was playing a rhythm guitar. Yeah, and there was no piano or strings. I don't know. I went back and listened to it about, 8 years ago. I was like, wow, and I think Chris Thomas had remembered that I'd played piano originally on it, and he wanted me to play it like that. And then, of course, he suggested doing the same feel that I'd played on the piano, but with a string sound, and that was when the whole thing came together. But By My Side, which is the ballad that was on X, was a very different kind of song. Kirk actually came up and helped me to complete By My Side. By my side, I had a good idea of what I wanted to do with the song, but I wanted it to be a fairly, I wanted it to be reminiscent of how you feel on the road when you've been out on tour for a long time, and those long tours that people do when they get on big tours, and you're on them for, you start off and you're great friends with everybody on tour, and then halfway through it you can't stand everybody, or they can't stand you, and then by the end of the tour you might be realizing it's going to come to an end, so you might as well get on, And that's kind of like what those long tours, or you just get on or you don't get on the whole way, one or the other.
Yeah.
But that's usually the way those long tours go. But there's an emotional aspect to it that people don't talk about much on those long tours, as professional musicians and touring artists, where people forget when they go along to see you at a concert and you're in their town, or, they're sitting there in their town, and they go home after they watch you, but your family's not in town with you, You don't get to go home to your family and your friends, And that's a weird feeling, It's sort of like, I don't know. It's sort of like you're putting your life on hold all the time for what, And then that sacrifice is not a small thing, I don't think,
Well, this is also a song, Never Tear Us Apart. I love that Michael didn't do what every other band was doing out there with the lyrics, where all of a sudden you go into this rock ballad thing where it's hard to write a ballad where you're dealing with love and keep them tough without going into the do.
Yeah, right.
The whole big thing.
Here it comes.
People waving their hands and doing the lighters and everything. You guys did something different with Never Tear Us Apart that can't call it a rock ballad. It didn't sound like a rock ballad, like the typical stuff that you heard. You know what I mean?
We can live for 1,000 years.
I agree. And I think that's why, that was one of the reasons you got to remember, this is 1987 or whatever it was we were recording it. And you're right. Most of our contemporary people who were our peers or competition in those years, that's right. They were the big rock ballads were like that you said, the big drum intros and whatever coming in, but that's why I wondered if Never Tear Us Apart suited Kick at all. I thought it was it was from outer space, as a recording. But I think Chris Thomas was right about it, and very right about it in the end, is that the chorus kind of is suddenly there. It's not bombastic. It's not overly, it's actually quite a gentle chorus, and it's just very real. You're just there. Suddenly you find yourself in the chorus. Michael's vocal was killer too.
Some of us don't know why.
And I think that's why a lot of other artists have covered that song over the years, and they still are. I'm amazed at how many people ask us to, can we use this on some reality show or film or whatever it is, competition, The Voice, or, idol shows or whatever it is, X Factors. And, it's such a torch song for a singer, because it's all about how the singer handles it emotionally, that song,
It kind of has the cadence or the rhythm of a waltz.
Yeah.
I like that. And of course, that stellar saxophone solo by Kirk.
Yeah.
And just incredible. But you're right, it's been used in Donnie Darko used it the second time around when they released the director's cut, because I guess the director really wanted that song at that moment, and he had to use a different song the first time they released it, and then he got to a bigger budget and got to release it the way he wanted to, and he had it on there.
It could never, ever tear us apart.
Law and Order, One Tree Hill, Jack Ryan, it just got used on that, and the Umbrella Academy. So, I mean, you're right. It's just, and then Tom Jones covering it.
Never tear us apart.
Well, yeah, I'm a massive fan of Tom's, and I'd met him years ago, on the Kick tour. We played 3 nights at the Pacific Amphitheater for 25,000 people, I think it was, out the back of California there, and 3 separate nights. And Tom Jones and Julian Lennon came out to see us and hang out or whatever. And that was the first time I'd met Tom, but I was a huge fan of Tom Jones. I still am, And but many years later, Tom caught up with us in New Orleans, I think it was. No, it was in Austin. It was in Austin, Texas, and where we'd been playing in the early 90s. And he wanted me to write a song for him, and I said, sure. So I wrote a song called Tight, which he never actually released, unfortunately, but I enjoyed tracking it with him, and we went into Willie Nelson's studio in Purdnell's there. And I was excited to be in Willie's studio, let alone recording with Tom. Anyway, and the other guys in INXS wanted to be a part of it because it was all pretty exciting. And Michael was kind of jealous because he couldn't, he had someone as charismatic as he was singing with us, kind of freaked him out, I think. Anyway, but we all went into the studio, the rest of us guys, and we tracked with Tom this song Tight. Well, yeah, that was an amazing experience. And afterwards, his son Mark manages Tom, and we'd all we were having a party in this hotel room, and had a big boom box, and we were playing the song and see if it was funky enough for what Tom wanted that we'd been recording, and it was Tom and Michael and Simon Le Bon, I think, from Duran Duran, were all in this room with me and Mark and these girls, and there's a party going on, and well, anyway, the girls all decide they don't want to be a part of it anymore, and they all left, and you had Tom Jones and Michael and Simon Le Bon all leaning out this door, waving goodbye to these girls, and Mark says, "Now you're not going to see that too often."
No kidding. Oh my gosh.
And I went, yeah, that's pretty funny. As I said to Mark, I said, you're right, I never thought about that.
Wow.
But Tom's a great guy, and we caught up with him again recently. I went along and saw him, and I love Tom Jones. I think he still is and was one of the greatest singers ever. And, Elvis was a fan of Tom Jones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's not unusual to be loved by anyone.
Well, and Ben Harper, of course.
But some of us don't know why.
Right.
And Paloma Faith.
So many people have done it. I don't even know anymore how many people have done it. But probably my favorite cover of Never Tear Us Apart is actually Joe Cocker's that he did. I always loved that.
They could never, ever
Recharted in 2014. But the other thing is the Port Adelaide Football Club, that was their song.
Right. Well, that was another one of these cultural things, okay, where with Never Tear Us Apart, it was like, David Koch from one of the television networks down here had championed, he said, would you mind if I championed this for one of the big AFL football teams? And we're, well, wow, okay, sure. And he did it. And because he's a connected guy, and people take, what he says seriously, he got it in there. And the next minute, you watch it on YouTube or whatever, and there's 80,000 people in a stadium singing this football anthem to a song that I wrote with Michael all those years ago. I sit there and that's what I said about culture. I find it overwhelming for me emotionally as I get older. I don't look at it egotistically or, gee, that's money in the bank, sure, but that's not the point of it. The point of it is it's gone beyond a pop, rock, whatever world. It's like people have taken this thing to their breast and their heart and their mind, and they're involved in it. Incredible,
Well, and it also meant so much because, of course, at Michael's funeral, that was the song, as I understand it, that as you guys were carrying out the casket, that was played.
Yeah, and Nick Cave, was playing and singing it, I think, or something, and some crazy person tried to jump off the balcony or something. It was so weird. Anyway, that whole thing was terrifying, to be honest with you. I don't like to think about it too much, but yeah, that's a big thing. That it was that song and many songs that By My Side is another one, and even a song that we released on the Switch album that we did with JD Fortune. There was a song that I wrote with Desmond Child. I wrote a song called Afterglow. That's right.
Afterglow. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Afterglow came out on the Switch album. And that was a song that what surprised me was how many people said they would like to use that song for the wake in a funeral or whatever. I didn't see that coming. This is a funny thing. And when you're a songwriter, you start off in one area and you realize you're writing the soundtrack of someone's emotional turmoil, and you're like, oh, wow, how'd that happen? And there's a lot of responsibility. There isn't, and yet there isn't, responsibility. It's kind of a weird area.
Thank you for watching. Leave us a comment about Andrew Farriss, INXS, and Michael Hutchence, and this breathtaking song. The truth is they just don't make them like they used to. That's why I believe that curating this music, these artists, is so important so that everybody knows about it in the coming generation. Can't say enough about this song. INXS was just a special band. Celebrate their excellence by getting the 30th anniversary edition of INXS's Masterpiece Kick, which features the remastered original album B-sides, rare mixes, and more across 3 CDs. You can get that in our Amazon link below. Also pick up Andrew Farriss's new album. It's stellar. You can do that as well. We invite you, if you like this content, to subscribe below. Be a part of this music celebration. Be a part of our community. Also, to help us curate these incredible artists and their songs, more videos, more interviews, become an honorary patron. Help us keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Stay strong, keep the music alive.